We all know by now that any watch can be dressed up as a luxury watch. A plain steel dress watch, throw the movement into a gold case and boom, it's luxury. Dive watch, make it out of expensive materials, use white gold plots and apply intricate dial work. Sports watch, chronograph, everything can be made luxury no matter the tool origins. But there's one type of watch where I think it's almost impossible. It's the field watch. Let's dive in. We have to start by defining what I see as a field watch. It's not as easy as you might think. A chrono is instantly recognizable because of the dual pushes and most likely some version of a tachymeter. Divers and GMTs are also easy to spot because the bezel are a dead giveaway. The field watch, however, is far more subtle. At its most simple state, the field watch is basically a dress watch. No complications, with a highly legible dial and easy to read numerals instead of stick or plot hour indicators. It remains a field watch until such time that it gets a triangle at the 12 o'clock position, when it becomes a pilot's watch. Yeah, the base design of a field watch is so simple that very small changes turn it into a pilot's watch, or an officer's watch, or a naval watch, or ultimately a dress watch. The field watch at its core, though, invites use as a tool. It's rugged, it's hard wearing, it's the ultimate beta watch, ignoring, of course, any kind of Jarman or Sunto or G-Shock that would most likely do a better job in the field than most quartz or mechanical field watches. Then we have the options. A ton of brands make field watches. Some brands are because of their history associated with field watches for one reason or another. CWC comes to mind and Hamilton comes to mind. The Rolex Explorer and the Tudor Ranger also come to mind, which to my knowledge have never been officially used in a military or field personnel context, but the idea of a watch that went somewhere in or around an expedition to Mount Everest gets included in my starter definition of a field watch. From there, you would be hard pressed to find a watch that has the classic field watch aesthetic that costs more than the Explorer, but it is possible to find some. There's the Chopard LUC Officer, which I had to include in the video simply because it's called the Officer, but realistically this is a watch that was worn by a general that has never set foot in the trenches. It's yellow gold and those big numerals are absent. Patek Philippe, though, has us covered. It's the 5226, which of course isn't marketed as a field watch, but look at it. Syringe hands, like a Hamilton, large legible numerals, like the Hamilton, time and date only, like a Hamilton, high contrast dial, like a Hamilton. Yeah, it's white gold, but who would know that at first glance? That's our starting point. A Hamilton khaki, the Ranger, the Explorer, and a Patek Philippe 5226. Now, why is it close to impossible to make a field watch luxury? I've had this working theory on how you make really good watches for a while, which I call my theory of addition and subtraction. It goes like this. When you're making a luxury watch, you start with everything that needs to be in a luxury watch and subtract until you find the right balance. When you want to make a tool watch luxury, you start with the base tool design and add until it becomes luxury without losing the tool origins. You want to make an ultra luxury high-end sports watch. What goes into a ultra high-end luxury sports watch? You need luxury materials, gold, platinum, ceramic. You want high polish detailing. You want intricate finishing. You want detailed dials. You can't get away with an unadorned movement. Possibly you even want precious gems. Complications, they're also an option. With all I've described, that's a 38mm Hublot Classic Fusion with Pave diamonds. See my point? Okay, it's an ugly watch, but it's a Hublot, so whatever. Let's try again. Rolex Daytona leopard print. There are tons of examples like the two I mentioned. What you should have in your mind is the connection that just because you take all the parts that you associate with a luxury watch, it doesn't guarantee a good-looking luxury watch. You have to exercise restraint to build a luxury watch that is truly attractive. Restraint is subtraction. You slowly dial it back until you get to the simplest interpretation of luxury that you can get away with. Too much engraving, too many details, and you've gone too far. So you just keep dialing back. This isn't to say that there aren't people out there that like fully pave gem set watches, but I would make a bet that most people would choose the less gaudy, the more restrained luxury interpretations over the in-your-face and over-the-top models. The restrained models are the ones that get remembered more. Those are the ones that turn into icons, not the gem set models. Then there's the opposite end of the scale. Think of a basic tool watch, a diver or a pilot's watch or a field watch. What comes to mind? Simple case, rugged finishing, legibility, simplicity. Everything about a true tool watch at its core is about the functionality. The The problem with tool watches are that they're cheap, but you as a watch manufacturer want to charge as much as possible, and you're under pressure from the Apple Watch, so you have to move upmarket. You have to convince people to pay more for your watch because that's where the big margins are. So you have to find a way of upgrading those tool watches. That's addition. You take the base watch and slowly add luxury details like materials, finishings, and complications. You can do this with a diver. You can do this with a pilot's watch. And of course, you can do this with a field watch. But most of you will agree that at some point, a tool watch that has been upgraded too much ceases to be a tool watch. There's always some level of subjectivity to this. I'm sure there are people out there with white gold submariners that actually still go diving with them. I've got no doubt that there's likely someone out there that uses their Patek travel time as their personal pilot's watch when they're flying their Cessna or potentially their Learjet. But generally speaking, most of us look at a watch and say, that watch has lost its tool watch origins in search of luxury. That's a subjective line, of course, but there are some lines that I think most would agree are clear Rubicons. A yellow gold sub is likely for most people, from a tool perspective, a bridge too far. An IWC big pilot's watch with a perpetual calendar is cool, but the complication is also going too far when considering what you're expecting from a simple, legible pilot's watch. Some people, in fairness, would even, feel that paying for an IWC pilot over a Leica or a Stover is a bridge too far. The IWC, because of the brand and the price alone, make them feel, it's not a tool watch anymore. For others, it's a meteorite dial on a Rolex GMT. It's cool, maybe, but it's not a tool anymore. This is where we apply this logic to the Hamilton, the Ranger, the Explorer, and the Patek. The Hamilton khaki is almost the most basic interpretation of a tool-style field watch. Consider the base 38mm khaki field. The case is fully sandblasted. There isn't a polished surface anywhere on that case. The dial is a simple matte white. It has no sunray effect, no Shunbun Grand Seiko detailing. The crown is big and functional. The syringe hands are black. I think they're DLC coated. There's lume on key spots on the dial and on the hands, but there's no applied lume plots and there are no applied hour markers. Even the strap is NATO. It doesn't get much more field watch than that. You get 80 hours of power reserve, 50 meters of water resistance. What more could you conceivably need from a field watch? It doesn't even need a compass bezel to be able to find north, south, east, and west. You can do that entirely without a bezel. Moving one step up, we get to the Ranger from Tudor. You can get it on a steel bracelet now. That's not technically necessary from a tool watch perspective, but it's fully brushed and so it keeps its utilitarian vibe. The movement is likely a bit better than the H50 that's in the khaki, but it's behind a closed case, so there's no showing off. It's still acting like a tool watch. It's still got a simple black dial with no special finishing. It's still no applied markers. The case gets a tiny bit of beveling, but it's not a lot. The upgrades are largely not aesthetic, but rather functional. You get a screw-down crown. You get a great bracelet. You get 100 meters of water resistance. Compared to the khaki, you're still getting a real tool field watch, just of an overall better quality. And then we get to the Explorer. For reference, I'm comparing it to the modern Explorers, so the 40 or 36 millimeter, or potentially the older 214270, the 39 millimeter. This is where you start to see a true luxury field watch. The case is the classic oyster case, and that means the flanks have a high polish. The crown is small, dainty even, and aesthetically it's a perfect fit for the case, but it's also less functional. The case upper is beveled like the Ranger, and surrounding the dial is a high polish bezel. And the dial? Applied markers make their appearance. White gold no less. This watch comes out of the same family of brands as Tudor, but compared to the Ranger, they have little in common. This watch is luxury. Now, how luxury is it? Explain to me the major differences between this watch and an Oyster Perpetual. Sure, the bezel is domed differently. The OP is more rounded. There are no numerals on the dial on the OP, and the OP has far more colorways when it comes to dial options. But basically, you can boil it down to the fact that there's a 3, 6, and a 9 on the dial, and a more rounded bezel. One's a fielder watch, the other's a luxury starter sports watch. Finally, there's the 5226, which I have never had the nerve to ask the AD to take out of the case, but I've drooled over it more than once. Granted, nobody really thinks this is a field watch, but I've included it to prove a point. Aesthetically, the 5226 has a lot in common with the Ranger, the Khaki, and the Explorer. It's got a simple case, time and date, simple dial with clear, legible numerals. It's got syringe hands like the Hamilton, applied numerals like a Rolex, white gold, of course, but who would know? It has a khaki desert chukka boot kind of leather strap that could easily pass for a field watch strap. But we all know the 5226 is not a field watch. and the Explorer barely is either. But why? All tool watches eventually lose their connection to their tool origins. Like I said, a yellow gold Submariner, a perpetual calendar Big Pilot. People will buy a Glasssuit CQ for close to $12,000 and will still call it a tool watch. But nobody would call the Patek 5226 a tool watch or a field watch. A lot of people would question to which extent the base Explorer is still a true field style tool watch. If there's one watch where enthusiasts go mad for the old style Rolexes, it's likely the Explorer. And why? Because it comes across as more authentic. It's less adorned compared to the modern versions. It's a little less polished. The bracelet is functional at best. And the luxury elements of a 14710 are just that bit more restrained compared to the current models. Go even further back and you lose those applied markers and all the white gold. Even going for 36mm over 40mm makes for a watch that feels less about being seen, about being luxury, and more about actually having a true functional purpose. And don't even get me started on the muted reception of the two-tone Explorer. What I've said so far are still just impressions. The key though is the nature of a field watch, which boils down to two things. First is simplicity. The field watch is the simplest of watches. At its core, it doesn't even necessarily have a date complication. It's time only. The consequence of this, to me at least, is that the margin for adaptation is very narrow. Take a dive watch and put on a shiny ceramic bezel and it still looks like a dive watch because of that characteristic bezel. But put on a sunray dial on a field watch and it doesn't look simple anymore. It looks smart casual or dressy even. Second is the field watch's similarity to a dress watch. The thing that differentiates a dress watch from a field watch is largely polish, the type of leather used on the strap, and markers instead of numerals. Which brings us back to the 5226. That's why. White gold, textured dial, high polish. Most people will instantly categorize it as a dress watch over a field watch. The Explorer, like I said earlier in the comparison to the Oyster Perpetual, the difference isn't huge. One could easily replace the other. The Explorer is treading such a fine line in terms of being a field-style watch over being a smart casual dress-style watch. Even the Hamilton Khaki has an example of this. Just think of the Murph. There are just small changes to that watch, and it's no longer a field watch to most people. They would call it a smart casual dress-style watch. To some extent, the whole tool watch discussion is a bit of a stretch. As somebody will likely say in the comments, a Casio G-Shock gets the job done from a tool perspective. Your phone tells the time and quartz is more accurate for any kind of timing. But setting aside that argument, which I do largely agree with, there is still a market for people who want a luxury watch that still feels more like a tool and less like luxury. There's a reason why people are in love with the Tudor Pelagos FXD. Those fixed lugs scream tool, even though 99% of buyers will never be in a situation where fixed lugs are necessary. People love titanium, and it's not generally because we have millions of watch owners that are allergic. It's because titanium tends to look more toolish. Not everybody wants a shiny two-tone Submariner with a blue bezel. And here we have the field watch. The watch that is most difficult to make luxury and still be categorized by buyers as a true tool watch because it's so simple in its base form. The field watch to me is a burger. Stick with me, it'll make sense in a minute. I've been to Michelin restaurants and high-end restaurants. I've had high-end pasta carbonara with the best guanciale and handmade pasta and the best cheese. I've tried luxury interpretations of Caesar's salad, of fish and chips, of sushi, and in almost all cases, I've appreciated those luxury interpretations. But the humble burger, foie gras does not make that burger better. Gold leaf does not make it better. I tried it in Dubai once. It was a hellish experience. 70-year-old Stilton cheese does not make it better. Wagyu beef is overrated in a burger. The best burger is the simplest burger, the uncomplicated burger, like the field watch. The best version is the simplest one, the uncomplicated one, the unpretentious one, which in a time where watch manufacturers are trying to make us spend more money is something that I find refreshing, liberating even. Not everything has to be shiny and polished and gold. And it's cool that the humble field watch resists the urge to change. Which is your favorite? Which is your most authentic field style watch? Let me know in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.